Okay, we finished the installation of the water heater, and I just want to go over a couple of things to close off some of the loose ends that we had from the previous conversation. So what we ended up doing on a number of pieces and parts was we just replaced them. Ended up putting the new valve in as we talked about earlier. The ground up here has been pulled out. I put a new escutcheon plate on here, drilled a hole, and just ran the wiring through that escutcheon up here. It's got this little ugly up here, but this is the garage, so I'm not going to sweat that too much. But it is far better than it was before. And you can see this is all new hardware. This, of course, has been replaced. We got rid of that because it had the old washers in these connecting points. These have been replaced. This is actually coated on the inside to marry the different metals that are involved here together without corrosion. At least that's the theory. So they were specially purchased, these little stubs that come up out of the top of the water heater. So just want to call that to your attention. And the same went here. This is the hot water going back into the house, and there's really no nothing major there. This was, of course, was replaced. What I did do was I got rid of the rigid copper that was running around the back for the high pressure valve. And what I did was I married two 24-inch pieces of stainless steel hose together. The reason why is because that's the length they come. That's the maximum length. So I put a piece of threaded stud in between and married those two together, and that's how I did that. So it just drapes in front, and you can see too is that we're not blocking off the access panel at all up here. So this is available for us to take it apart without the hose actually getting in the way. And I also did some plumbing work over here at soldered welding to get this all to come together so that we could just screw this up tight. And of course, every connection on the water heater has been wrapped in white tape, plumber's tape, in order to prevent leaks. And nothing's leaking. The power is on. It's 80 gallons, and it took a while to fill it up. We also had to bleed it off because there was air in it, so we had to turn on the hot water inside the house, and it gushed a lot of air, and it spit water, and it did that for quite some time. As the water in the tank was displacing the air, it pushed it out. So it's there. It's really just a matter of tonight heating this up and trying it tomorrow to see where our temperature range is and if we're comfortable with what we have. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Okay, the water heater was inspected by the city, and they did not like the loop that was created as a result of the high pressure valve that came from the front of the water heater, looped around and attached to this pipe. So the only way that I could get a downward slope on this part of the water heater was to open up the wall. I did that for a couple of reasons. One is that I need to figure out where this pipe was going. If it was going straight down, well, then I could have just come down here and done some work and shortened the pipe, and that would have given me my downward flow. That wasn't the case. It was heading in a, off to the right here. So I've opened this hole up in the wall, and you can see the pipe here is just kind of hanging that way, and for whatever reason it does this this dog leg downward. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll probably come down further than what I've got right now, just in case technology on water heaters changes or whatever. We just don't want to have to do this a second time. So that's the primary reason why I have this hole in the wall. The second is that we found after having done this job that there is insulation missing from this wall. The bedroom is on the other side of this wall, and we've always known it to be a really cold room, especially during the winter. This is a north exposure here, so when the north winds come in during the winter, it blows into the garage, it hits this wall, and somehow gets into the other room. It's very cold, and we never really understood why that was. Well, a part of that answer has just been solved. There's no insulation from here. It actually, before I cut it out, it stopped right about here. Up for another 4 or 5 feet, so it was just wallboard to wallboard, and there's nothing that keeps that cold air out. So that was a big reason why we've got this big hole in the wall, was to solve that problem once and for all as well. Of course, then the next thing that you think about is, well, what else on the wall hasn't been insulated? That's the obvious question that needs to be answered. So what I did was I took a hole drill, installed it, chucked it up, and I did a test hole here and ran into insulation. Odds are that it's probably okay. It probably goes all the way up. I don't think we're going to go any further, than our space that we're working with here. So I'm going to drop the pipe down, we'll add the insulation, we'll stub it out, and then we'll do a little bit of soldering and redo our connection for that high pressure valve on the water heater. Thanks. Okay, so we've made a lot of progress here, and you can see that I've taken out all the drywall that surrounded this whole area that I spoke about earlier. And so now we've got the infrastructure showing here. It's just some things here that I wanted to point out is when I removed the drywall, I was sure to get some of the wood in the studs to show so that I have something to connect the drywall to all the way around, right? So that'll give me something to screw into, and that'll hold the drywall in place really, really well. The other thing is that, I think I implied this in some of the earlier part of the video was these are not strapped down. They never did that. They never did that. Why? You can only imagine. What I'm going to do is remove this 2x4, and there's about, I don't know, an inch or so between the pipe and the 2x, and I'm going to bring it forward, and I'm going to strap these pipes down to it tight so that they can't move. You might be wondering or might imagine is that when I go to slip the drywall over the top of this, I'm going to have to get these holes perfectly cut so that they fit over the existing pipe. The escutcheons will have to go. I'm not going to heat this up, remove it, and then put the, later on after the wallboard is in. That's what I would have to do to get these escutcheons on and off is remove these connectors, and I don't have any intentions of doing that at all. This one's even more complicated. We've got the valve to deal with. What I'll have to do is, because there's actually water behind this pipe right now being held back by the valve, I'll need to shut the water off in the house. Then I can take the valve, close the lever, and slide the drywall over the top of that. Up here in the electrical connection, which I'm just absolutely befuddled by, I have no idea what they were thinking here. It's almost as though this casing was some sort of decoration or something. It's just hanging here, right? I think what I'll do is I'll take and bring this down. I'm going to tie that to the 2x here so that it's actually a real live connection rather than just a wire hanging in the wall. And then we'll just route it out the drywall in a different fashion. And all this will have to be removed because I'll need to make a hole in order for this to be small enough so I can fit it through. So this is, it's the detail work that gets you here, and that's what's really, really time consuming. The whole time we don't have our water heater installed, so no pressure here, right? That's kind of how this goes. So that's my plan right now, is lots of disassembly so that I can get the drywall over. That's really the complicating factor here. I haven't figured out how I'm going to actually cover these stub holes up yet. I don't know yet, but it's not going to be the escutcheon, but it's going to look good. I know that much. I'll spend some time dealing with that. Back to the high pressure valve release. What I've decided to do is that I'm going to come through here. I'm going to cut that somewhere down in this area, like right here. I want to take, out of the way of this, I'll take this, elbow it, come this way, and then I'm going to come straight out. And there are reasons why I'm going to do that. Primarily to get my downward draft that I want on my exit hose, and something that I can tie off so that the water heater itself is not actually covering it. I want to be able to work on it and get to it with a wrench and so forth. That seems to make the most sense right now. So that is where we're at. What I did want to mention is when I cut this drywall out, I use a tool here that is just absolutely a joy to use. The good news is that the prices on these have come way down. This is called a Fine multi-tool, F-E-I-N, and it's made in Germany or somewhere over there in Europe by some people who really know how to make tools. And essentially what it is if you've ever had a cast removed, if you've ever broken a bone, or if you know somebody who has, that's a plaster cast, and this tool comes with a number of blades. And what I did when I cut the initial inspection hole, which was about a 1x, I used this tool, and there's some real fine teeth on it. And the way it works is it vibrates. It doesn't actually spin. Theoretically, you could touch this with your hand. It doesn't cut into soft, fleshy type material, but if it's rigid, it will definitely cut through. So that's how I use this, and it comes out really easily. It's got a sort of a lever lock on it here, and then it's removed in this fashion. This tool is about $400, and I'll tell you, it sounds like a lot of money, but we really think that we got our money from it. We've used this on a number of jobs, and every single time we've ever used it, we're like, thank God for the Fine multi-tool. I mean, that thing has really saved us a number of times. What I anticipate doing is I'm going to use a different blade, and these things are really costly. I mean, they don't play around. The good news is they last a long time. This is the original blade, and I've used this to cut nails and, you know, through drywall and tight little places, wood, all kinds of things I've done with this. So obviously it goes on like that, and you can adjust it in any, you know, configuration that you want with its appropriate attachment on it. So you can put it at an angle and so forth, and then you just snap this down and it locks the blade in place. So that's how it works. It's a variable speed deal. It's got some adjustment there and the on-off switch, obviously. It comes with a gigantic extension cord. You know, this thing is on the order of like 10 or 12 feet. It's the longest extension out of a tool I've ever had. What I'm going to use this for is when I need to cut the copper tube right here. This is a very, very confined space. I don't have a lot of room. Normally I would cut this tubing with a circular cutter. It looks like almost like a C-clamp, and you put it on there and you spin it around. We don't have that kind of room in here. I'm going to use the blade on the fine tool. I'm just going to hold it there, and it's just going to work its way through the copper until it's through, and then this will all fall off, and then I'll start the welding with the new joints and so forth. So that's where we're at. We'll do an update in a minute. This is the last installment of the water heater project, and I just wanted to go over a couple of things that have been done. We'll provide some of the detailed photography will be included in the project in addition to the video. So I took out this whole wall behind the unit and strapped down the plumbing that was just laying loose. I connected the electrical line to an actual stud behind the wall. We took care of really which was the biggest problem, was to remove the loop that had been created, which is essentially a water trap that was we couldn't get it to pass inspection. So I've actually taken care of that. Some of that detail again is in the photography. We added all of the insulation that was not present behind this wall. I put a whole bunch of that in there, so that's really good. I've also pulled the unit out away from the wall so we can get a paintbrush behind here and a roller and finish this wall out when it comes time to do painting in the garage. So that pretty much winds up the project. Thanks for watching.